Okay, thank you. So it's 7 o'clock, so why don't we begin, since I believe at least the board and the applicant are here. I'm Joanne Petito, and I want to read a required message for the Zoom meetings. This is the December 15th, 2020 meeting of the Exeter Zoning Board. As chair of the Exeter Zoning Board of Adjustment, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. On December 4th, 2020, public notice of this meeting was posted on the town website and on the bulletin board of the town offices at 10 Front Street. As provided in that public notice, the public may access the meeting online and via phone. Please take note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, and when each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting and who that person is, such as your son, daughter, spouse, etc., which is required under the right to know law. So as I said, I'm Joanne Petito, and I am here by myself. Does someone else want to start? And on my screen anyway, you're right next to me. Maybe we can go along that way if everyone else is seeing the same thing.
Sure. I'm Ann Sermon, and I am alone here in the basement.
I'm Laura Davies, and I am alone in this room.
I am Martha Pennell, and I am alone in this room.
I am Rick Thielbar, and I too am alone.
I'm Kevin Baum. I am alone, although my daughter will probably be in the room before the end of the evening.
I'm Esther Olson Murphy. I am alone, but you will probably see people walk by into this hallway.
Okay, thank you. And if, just as a reminder for members of the board, just keep yourselves muted while you're not speaking to eliminate background noise, if you can remember that. Also, we have several alternates here, and I believe that we need only, let's see, 1, 2, 3. We only need one alternate to vote, if I'm counting right. I don't know who wants to vote on this. We have one application tonight. Martha, I know you've been at multiple meetings and have listened, I believe, without voting. I'm not sure. I don't know if you want to vote or if one of the three of you. Does anyone have a preference?
I've actually so if somebody else would like to, I'm happy to let someone else vote.
Okay. Martha or Esther? Do either of you have a preference for voting or just participating in deliberations?
I have no preference.
I'm sorry? Did Esther agree, or I didn't catch it?
I don't have any preference on who wants to be voting and who does not.
Why don't you go ahead, Esther?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the first, the only application for this evening is the application of William and Mariah Curtis for a variance from Article 6.10 Home Occupations, Section 6.10.2, Evidence of Use, to permit one additional commercial vehicle, i.e. a lettered truck, to be parked overnight on the property located at 99 Beach Hill Road. The subject property is located in the RU Rural Zoning District, tax map parcel number 13-7, case number 20-17. Would the applicant like to proceed?
Yes, Madam Chair. My name is Sharon Summers, and I'm with Donahue, Tucker, and Shindella. I'm here tonight representing Will and Mariah Curtis. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So the Curtises own property at 99 Beach Hill Road, And Will Curtis, who owns the Tree Care Company, is with me tonight to answer any particular questions that you might have about his company. And we are here tonight to seek variance relief to allow his company to have a vehicle stay on site, a pickup truck essentially, which is going to be have letters on it identifying it as a company truck. And the reason that we are here tonight is that we need this permission because he already has one vehicle on the property, which is allowed as a matter of right. So we are seeking permission to have a second vehicle. Will Curtis has had a home occupation permit, which was issued in 2019, to allow his tree care company to operate on the premises. As I just said, he does have one commercial vehicle on the premises right now as a matter of right. He is allowed to have signage as well, but he has opted not to have that. He was previously here this summer seeking relief to have a total of 4 commercial vehicles on the property, and he was denied that variance application before this board. And so he has decided to come back now with a substantially different application seeking just one additional vehicle. So with that, by way of background, I'd like to now just briefly go through what the variance applications are. And I would note also that we submitted a couple of exhibits with the application material. One is that we have the home occupation permit, and then we have a couple of photos in here which you may want to take a look at as we're discussing the variance application. Those are listed as Exhibit 2, and in particular, there are a couple that show the 2 white vehicles. One which has no lettering on it, and that is essentially the one that is under discussion tonight that we're seeking to have identification, which would be similar to the other vehicle, which has some sort of device on top of it it must be a chipper or something that has Curtis Tree Care. So those are the 2, and you'll see a couple of other vehicles or a couple of other photographs in there showing the proposed location of the vehicle. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as you're thinking about the various variance criteria that I'm going to be discussing. So with that, by way of background, we believe that the variance request here for the second vehicle will not be contrary to the public interest. We believe that the basic zoning objective here is to balance the use of a permitted home occupation with the need to maintain the fundamental residential character of the neighborhood, and in particular to regulate the evidence of the use. And that's the terminology that's in the permit ordinance. If you take a look at the essential character of the neighborhood, as we've noted in the application materials, we do believe that the home occupation here with 2 lettered vehicles will not alter the essential character. We believe it's going to be consistent because the neighborhood, while it does have residential, does contains a mix of other things, including agricultural and other home occupation uses. Additionally, the zone in which this is located, the RU zone, contemplates by special exception a number of other non-residential uses and does allow the home occupations. In essence, the essential character of the locality includes essentially what we're talking about right now, which is home occupations, in addition to other residential uses, and therefore we don't think that having a second vehicle on the premises would interfere with that essential character. In addition to that, having the second lettered vehicle at the property is not going to do anything to threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. The vehicle is already on the property. So it's not as if we're going to be adding any impact to traffic or safety, that kind of thing. The only difference here is that we are seeking to have a lettering to identify this as a company vehicle. The second criteria, of course, is the spirit and intent of the ordinance. This, as we all know, is by virtue of New Hampshire law, is essentially the same thing as the public interest. So I won't go into that in any great detail other than to restate what I've just talked about with the public interest. The third criteria is substantial justice. We believe that in this case, as you know, it's a balancing test. And here, essentially, Mr. Curtis needs this vehicle with the lettering on it in order to conduct his business. He advises me that the lettering is important to be able to comply with state and federal requirements having to do with identification of the company. And in particular, if that identification is not on there, that he's going to be subject to fines. I believe it's from DOT. So as a result of that potential risk, the loss to Mr. Curtis is the variance is at hand or is denied, is that he's not going to be able to use the second vehicle without risk of being able to or to having fines. He uses the vehicle in question, the one that's shown in the photo without the letters, for a variety of business tasks, including going to various potential sites to give estimates to people. He doesn't necessarily need to bring the other vehicle, the one with the chipper on it, because he doesn't need all that equipment when he's simply going out to give an estimate. But the second vehicle is still very much a part of his business operation, and it is very important that it be identified as a business vehicle rather than a personal one. By contrast, if the variance is denied, then there's going to be no discernible gain that we are aware of to any individual or to the public. We are aware of no opposition to this particular variance request, and so we believe that substantial justice would be done if the variance were to be granted. Fourth, with regard to whether or not the values of surrounding properties are going to be diminished, we do not believe that that would be the case here. There is not going to be any additional traffic or disruption as a result of allowing the vehicle, which is already on the property, simply to have a lettering installed on it and be identified as a company vehicle. Therefore, we believe that that particular criteria is met as well. Lastly, the hardship criteria. In the first instance, this particular property does have special conditions which make it different than the other properties that are in the immediate neighborhood. If you look, and I believe that we submitted to you a copy of the tax map, this property here is kind of it's an oddly shaped property, and there's kind of an L shape, and it's got a significant amount of frontage on Beach Hill Road, and the house is up close to the road. The parking area where the two vehicles would be situated is also fairly up close to the road. And then the property, the balance of it wraps around in kind of an L shape out behind two other abutting properties. The property itself also backs up to a series of conservation properties. In addition to that, and again, I believe that this is part of your exhibit package, we submitted some information showing that there's quite a distance between where we propose to park the two vehicles to the nearest abutter, which would be Christine Sterrett. And I think you can see in some of the photos that we've submitted, there's a certain amount of screening between where the vehicles are going to be and her property. But there's a distance between of approximately 300 feet between her house and the Curtis property line. So in essence, there's quite a bit of, first of all, the lot is quite large. Second of all, where the vehicles are proposed to be parked, there's quite a significant distance between that and the nearest residence, which might otherwise have any view. That's addresses the special conditions. With regard to the fair and substantial relationship test, here is that the intent of this is to allow home occupations without substantially altering the appearance and the use of the property. As I mentioned before, the actual language of the ordinance talks about regulating the evidence of the use of the home occupation. What we're talking about is having 2 lettered vehicles in a location on the property, which is not going to have a huge impact on abutters, and it's not even going to be particularly visible from people passing by on the street. If it, however, is applied literally to this particular property, it's going to make it fairly significantly difficult for this particular tree business to operate, one which already has a home occupation, because there is a legitimate need for a second vehicle which is going to have company identification on it to be able to fully utilize the permit. And then lastly, in terms of the proposed use being a reasonable one, as I've said before, this is really the need for this second vehicle with the identification on it is driven exclusively by the need to be able to comply with the relevant state and federal regulations concerning company identification on vehicles. And so we believe that the proposed second vehicle on the site with the lettering is a reasonable one. And we would ask that you grant the variance as presented. And if there are any particular questions about the vehicle, we'd be happy to answer those.
I have a question. Our main concern with the previous hearing was not so much with this applicant's business plan and method of operating, but potential future owners. And I guess I was wondering what approval of this application would mean. It would mean simply one additional vehicle for commercial use on the property for future users. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, this variance, if granted, would obviously go in tandem with the home occupation permit and would travel with the land. Yes. Or run with the land, excuse me.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear about that.
My question sort of follows up to that. Could this be, two things. So are there employees involved so that at any given time, if this truck is lettered, then both vehicles are going out at the same time? This is a 5-day-a-week full-time business? I thought not. I thought because I was in the
it's 1 day a week.
So you never be using the same 2 vehicles at the same time because you're pretty much it, or do you have employees?
Correct. I can't use both at the same time. Yes.
And I guess, again, to follow on to that is this could expand, I think, to what Ms. Davies was saying, too, that even for the next note for yourself, and you may come back to us in a year and say, I need another vehicle. And I'm the new person on this board, so I guess my question goes back to the definition of a home occupation. Originally, he was allowed to have 1 vehicle and signage. So he's opted not to have signage, but could he in a future date opt for signage and another vehicle? And maybe one of the board members can answer that. I just want to make sure.
Well, let me try to.
Well, you can answer that.
Yeah, let me try to address some of these things. First of all, I think to answer your question, Ann, yes, he could have signage as a matter of right. I think that what he's doing is to indicate he's trying to maintain as unobtrusive a presence as possible in the community. I think it is reasonable to expect that when he goes out to job sites to try to give an estimate and so forth, he may want to bring a smaller vehicle, one that doesn't include the chipper on it, in order to go out to these kinds of things. In terms of other employees, under the terms of the home occupation permit, he's capped at no more than 2 additional non-residents who are going to be employed in the home occupation. So I don't think that there's a risk here of, by granting this variance, all of a sudden having the board having to be faced with a number of other employees that are going to be on site, because by the terms of the home occupation permit, he can't do that. Now, can I tell you that he is going to come back to this board with some other request for relief for the property of any nature, whether it's a setback or any other thing? I don't know. But I think by virtue of the nature of what he's just described, this is a fairly limited kind of operation. And I think that he has met the criteria of the variance, and that what he has described is accurate. He needs one vehicle in order to perform more of the heavy lifting, if you will, elements of the tree care business that he has. And then one additional vehicle, which in order to avoid getting fines, he would use for more administrative business operations, if you will.
And I have a question on the same line. The variance having the signage, can that be taken away? That I couldn't, because I'm okay with never having signage on the property, and also not being able to come back and ask for another vehicle. I hope to expand, but not at this property. So could that be put in there, that those options go away?
That's very interesting, because that's kind of where I was going, because you kind of like opt one for the other.
Sure.
Going to expand, because the next thing I would have said is then the whole thing should just be, we don't want this to get too big. The whole thing should go off somewhere else, where all the vehicles should just.
I understand. Yes.
And maybe someday that's a good thing to have happen, but.
Yeah, financially, I wish you could now.
Right. I don't know if we have that authority, what he's asking. That's up to someone else more experienced can let me know that. But anyway.
Well, we would be, based upon the willingness of my client to accept reasonable conditions of approval, certainly this board has the ability to impose those.
But we do, and actually, if I could ask a question, that was one of the questions I had. We did discuss this with a larger ask in the summer with some proposed conditions. So one question I had for you, Sharon, is, or for your client, is we had discussed two conditions. One is that the vehicle. In this case, the one vehicle would not be above 20,000 gross vehicle weight.
Correct.
And then the other was that no vehicles would be parked behind the property. And by that, I think that the area that goes behind the two closest lots to the left.
Correct.
And so I'm not necessarily recommending those, but I wanted to ask the applicant if those were still acceptable.
Well, can I ask a question? Will, before you answer that, can I just get some clarification on that? When you say vehicles behind the property, are you referring to, I presume that you're not referring to personal vehicles. I mean, if he has, say, a pickup truck or snowmobiles or whatever.
I clarify. In this case, I guess I should say vehicle. I was reading I pulled up the minutes from the August meeting, and I was reading what had been discussed, and in that case, it was several vehicles. In this case, I think one. But I don't even know that I need to go there, because my other question for you was, I guess I want to know what's being presented tonight, and that may include an area where the commercial vehicles are going to go. If I'm reading or I should ask you, am I reading the second aerial photograph that's in the packet correctly? There seems to be a rectangle in red pen to the right of the residence.
Hang on, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the same thing. So we have Exhibit 2, which shows two photographs. One of which is a lettered truck and one of which is a white pickup truck, which is unlettered. And then if you keep going in that, I'm trying to see where you're talking about.
If you keep going through the packet, there's a number of photos that show the view from across the street.
Yeah.
And then there are some overhead aerial
Right.
shots.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, okay.
The second aerial photograph appears to have a rectangle to the right of Mr. Curtis's residence. Maybe that was not deliberate. So that's my question. Is that intended to denote the commercial vehicle parking?
What I would say, I don't see I don't see a rectangle, so I want to be careful in terms of what we're talking about here.
Kind of an L mark. Is that what you mean, Kevin? As you're looking, instead of a rectangle, do you mean that red? It's like an L-shaped mark. Is that what you mean? Oh, that rectangle, doesn't look red. It looks black on mine, actually.
Okay, it looks reddish on mine.
Okay, it's right.
The B,
yeah.
Above the B on Beach Hill Road, there appears to be a black or red rectangle.
It's the second aerial photo in the packet.
But I think this answers my question, which is if we have to ask the question, it was not intended to denote a parking area.
Well, I guess I think that to some extent the answer is yes, in the sense that I think we're kind of saying similar things. If you look at the first aerial picture, you can see the red blob over the what is the Curtis residence. It's got kind of a blue. It looks like it's got kind of a blue roof.
Yes.
And then you can kind of see the edge of the property because there's a couple of vehicles parked along the edge. I think what we need to do is to look. If you look in a combination of the two photos, where it says Exhibit 2, you have two photos right there. And the two photos depict two vehicles which are lined up next on sort of a crushed gravel driveway next to a wooded boundary. And if you then skip over, Kevin, to your point, and go to that first Google map, not the second one, because I think that's a little confusing, but the first one, what you will then see is an arrow showing a 300-foot distance between where the cars are parked, or the trucks rather, and then the Starrett house. So we could agree that if you want to use that Google map together with the photos as a point of reference as to where these two vehicles are going to be parked, I think, and I'll have Will weigh in on this too, but I think that would be acceptable.
The Google map comes right after the second photo. Is that what you mean? There's one Google map.
There's a few intervening photos about what it looks like, from the street and so forth. But then, yes, yeah. There's the Google map without the mysterious rectangle. And so the Google map without the mysterious rectangle just notes that there's a distance between 300 feet between the Starrett house and where the vehicles are going to be parked.
Kevin, I think I know. Yeah. The issue is the discussion about not parking behind. The property has sort of a panhandle that reaches behind, not the 300 foot away property, but the other way. And the concern during the discussions was that we didn't want a commercial vehicle parked behind the neighbors in the panhandle area.
Correct.
And it got to be that really wasn't an issue to the applicant at all. And I still think that that's the case.
Correct. That is the case. That is a wooded area that's doesn't allow parking. It's lack of better words. It's just a wet area that you really couldn't turn into anything. It's for the kids to play. And that would stay that way, for no parking.
So I've got a question or two here, and I need some help. So I got through this, looking at it. I was really virtuous and actually looked on Saturday, and I said, damn, this is easy. He doesn't want a sign And what he really wants is a sign on his truck. So we'll just say, no sign in the yard, will a sign in the truck. Right? Problem solved. What could be the problem with that? So I was going along great guns, and I find out by looking at the home employer space, he's got the right to have one commercial vehicle. I'm understanding from the discussion is that by definition, a commercial vehicle has signage on it. Is that true? Can you have a commercial vehicle without signage?
Don't understand the question fully.
Okay. I jumped to maybe an unrelated point that you didn't understand the leap. So let me leap back. We've heard from you today that you need the signage to not be in violation of state requirements. And when you say that to me, I'm hearing that the state requires a commercial vehicle to have signage on it. And that's my question. Is that true or is that not true?
The state requires a commercial vehicle is any vehicle over 10,001 pounds. This vehicle is under 10,001 pounds. So it is technically not a commercial vehicle. It's a passenger truck. But if it is used for business, you have to be seen by no less than 50 feet by DOT, a state. You have to identify yourself as a business. And to do so, you have to have lettering that you can see from 50 feet away.
Okay.
Just on the doors only. Right. That's all I'm asking for. Passenger side, driver's side door, something you can see from 50 feet away.
Okay. So the answer to my question is yes, the state requires it.
Yes.
Okay. So now let me go a step further here. So I go in with my great swap, and I'm going to make this swap. We're going to take this ugly old sign you've chosen not to put on the front of your yard. I'm going to put a nice sign on the side of your truck. So I go in here and it said prohibited sign types. This is 5.7.C.3 that says signs mounted or attached or painted on trailers, boats, motor vehicles when used as additional advertising on or near the premises. In other words, it says you can't do that. Now, in another part, you've got a right to park one commercial vehicle, which, as I'm reading this, the zone, our book conflicts with itself. In one place it says you can, in another place it says you can't.
Rick, my understanding of that is that it is not to prohibit vehicle signage, but to prohibit people from getting around the sign restrictions in the ordinance by just putting a commercial vehicle in their yard or along the road. Let's say they weren't allowed to have a sign at all, putting up a box truck out there and parking it there forever for signage. I think that's what the ordinance is intended to prohibit.
I agree with you, but they didn't do a very good job to my way of thinking. And right now, he could go out and buy the ugliest commercial vehicle he can find and park it at the very front of his lot and leave it there all the time.
But can I just respond to that? I mean, I would first of all, I don't think that the zoning officer has concluded that the sign ordinance language carries the same interpretation as you're suggesting, and I think also the scenario that you're just mentioning too is precisely what he doesn't want to do. I mean, he wants to be on the road, and he wants to do it in a way such that he's not going to get fines. It wouldn't make any sense for him to park a vehicle with a giant ugly sign on it and not be able to drive it around and get new business.
Sharon, I have the same trouble with my wife. That's exactly the point I was trying to make, that the rules require, the rules allow him to park a very ugly vehicle right at the front of the property, and that's not what he's doing at all. So I think the issue in terms of making a variance that isn't going to travel with the property is to restrict the second vehicle to a class 2. Is that what I want to say? A class 2 vehicle?
Yes. Class 2 passenger vehicle.
And it's hard for me to see how having a vehicle that lightweight with a sign on it does anybody any damage. I would suggest that we ought to take him up on his willingness to commit to not have the signage that he's allowed to have by what do I want to say?
By the permit.
Right. And just in effect, the way my mind was working, put the sign on the truck and make a commitment to not have a commercial sign for the business on the property as a swap.
I think that's agreeable to Mr. Curtis.
Yes.
I think that'd be the only restriction we'd need to make me comfortable. Well, I voted in favor of his last time in, so I was comfortable to start.
I want to understand though, Rick. Are you also discussing a vehicle size or weight restriction?
Yes, class 2.
Okay.
So class 2, the request is for a class 2 vehicle. So that's not imposing anything additional to what he's already offered.
That's 10,000 GVW and under, which is a class 2.
Right.
So I'm asking for less than I asked last time. I'm allowed 1, and last time I asked for anything under 20,000. Now I'm asking for anything under 10, which could be your car.
Well, are there class 2s at more than 10, or is that two ways of saying the same
thing?
It's
10,000 pounds is class 2. 10,001 pound puts you over class 2.
Okay.
So you go into a larger vehicle, and then you could class 3 get a larger truck, and I'm not asking for that. It would no larger than a pickup truck would ever be allowed.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. So we'd have confirm that we're talking about the second vehicle being no larger than a class 2, and except the restriction that there be no home signage as allowed by the book.
Yeah, that's acceptable.
I have a question about the property. It looks to me like the house property is pretty well surrounded by a wooded area on the sides and in the back. Is that accurate? I mean, can your abutters, and I know you talked about that one house, I saw there were cars or trucks parked in the driveway today, which I look similar to or the same like the trucks in the picture. Would the abutters even be able to see that truck parked in your driveway? It looks like there's some.
If you're looking at my house to the property to the left, no, they cannot. Property to the right, you would really have to try. Maybe take a little stroll into the field to see the vehicles. Front and back, no, it's completely wooded, and there's no trespassing on one side. So, answer your question, no.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Is there anything else the applicant wanted to say? Okay.
I don't think so. I think we're all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any members of the public present who would like to speak? I don't.
I do have someone who wants to speak, but they can't figure out how to.
Okay, there is a way to call in, I know. Can the person from Exeter TV, I don't know if Bob is here, or there's Daniel here, give some instruction on how that can be done?
So there is a agenda.
Okay.
Or you'd be happy to find out that I have my agenda today.
Okay, there is a, okay, the phone number is 1-646-558-8656. And there is a webinar ID of 862-3271-4039. So that's to call in if you wish to speak. And the link is exeter.nh.us/J/862-327-14039. I don't know if this individual who wants to speak is listening and can hear that, or if you need to, Mr.
I just sent him a message. He sent me a message saying I'm on the meeting and I'd like to speak, but he
just needs to know how to unmute himself.
Yeah. And
if he is just an attendee, there was someone in here that was raising their hand earlier. So if they want to rejoin, I can let them talk. But attendees aren't allowed to talk unless we let them talk.
Well, I'm not hearing anything back from him, so it's just my friendly neighbor.
Okay.
I will state that we remember that you had quite a bit of neighborhood support in your last application over the summer, and that was recognized.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the reason for the 300-foot arrow was indicating the family that actually felt strongly against the application.
Yes, and that arrow is indicating the side that they cannot see from their property. Even if they took a stroll, they can't see. They'd have to be on my property
or drive by.
Or drive directly by, yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to read that phone number one more time in the event that whoever is listening does want to call in. And the reason I'm doing the phone number is because it seems easier for someone who's listening to jot it down than the link, okay? And that's 1-646-558-8656. And the webinar ID that needs to be entered is 862-3271-4039. Okay, so.
Ms. Chair, we do have one person in the attendees. It's a Hazy. I don't really know how to pronounce that.
John.
Okay, if that person can, I see this person is muted. If you can unmute yourself. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, this is John Heisey.
Can you state your address, please, also?
It's 105 Beach Hill Road.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I lost a couple minutes at the end there. I was able to listen. I think there was a difficulty with something going on. I wasn't able to speak. So I'm not quite sure where we're at with this right now.
That's okay. We were just asking for members of the public. So if you can just tell us what you want, whatever your comments are.
I just wanted to comment on the issue with the expanding of the next business that could possibly come in, and any other anything else like that. And I think the weight restriction that he's asking for seems to be a pretty good idea. We had thrown around a couple ideas the last time we saw each other with Will, and that weight limit that he's asking for really restricts on the size of vehicles that someone else could have there. It's pretty limited to small vehicles only, and it would mean like a dump truck couldn't come in there, or excavators or concrete trucks or anything like that. So it would really just limit it down to small landscaping businesses like that, and which is pretty much all he has right now. And that's about it for now.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, are there any other members of the public? Okay, all right. Does anyone have any other questions for the applicant, or would the applicant like to respond in any way before we close public session? Oh, go ahead, Martha.
I drove by this afternoon, and I think I had the right house. I thought I saw 4 vehicles. One, I think, was obviously a green sedan. And then I thought there were 3 trucks. And then in the park in back, under a big shroud, was a large something that you would hitch on to a truck that might have been a shredder of some sort. So I guess my question is, are you going to be parking anything other than trucks, like a chipper?
Well, that attaches to the truck, and that should have been in one of the photos, to the chipper truck in question. And those other 2 trucks that you saw are not, they're just antique trucks I've collected. No longer, one had business lettering just for parades, but I've taken that off per request from my last meeting with Doug. So those vehicles are permitted. The sedan, I don't know.
It looked like a personal vehicle.
There's my wife's vehicle.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I thought I saw 3 other trucks, not just 2.
Well, you should have saw an orange truck, which is registered to, it's a personal vehicle, not a business vehicle. So that doesn't pertain. And then a blue 1979 pickup truck, another antique, that's sitting next to the orange 87. That also is not part of the business or in question.
How many vehicles are going to be parked there? I'm getting confused.
Well, I guess for the hearing, I'm just asking for 2 commercial. I can have as many personal vehicles as I want there. I guess my lawyer could speak more on that. But I'm only asking for 2. I'm allowed to have as many personal.
Yeah, I think, Martha, this is Sharon Summer speaking. I think that while you may have driven past there and seen any number of either cars or vehicles, really what's before the board tonight is the number of vehicles that are going to be associated with the tree care business. And really what those are the two vehicles that are included in the photos, which are the two white vehicles. I don't know if that helps it at all.
Yeah, so it sounds, Martha, like some of the vehicles that you saw were personal vehicles. And he's asking for permission to have two commercial vehicles. In addition, he's allowed to have one, but a variance for a second. And actually, I have another question. We discussed two possible conditions, the size of the vehicle and not having any signage. And at one point we were discussing not having vehicles parked behind the property, and I don't recall whether that was something that, and I don't know if the board I don't know whether that would be a proposed condition or if that's something that the applicant was agreeing to or not.
Yes.
It is, okay.
It was the panhandle.
Yes.
That part that is directly behind someone's house, and I was agreeing to no vehicles, not even personal vehicles.
Will, I wouldn't go that. I would not recommend that. I would not recommend that you not have any vehicles back there. I think it'd be better to simply have a restriction, if you are agreeable to this, to not have the vehicles that are the subject of this hearing. In other words, the two lettered commercial vehicles. Okay.
Okay. Well, the thing to remember is that there is no restriction to having several commercial vehicles there during the daytime. The restriction is having them there overnight.
That's right.
Yeah, that's another issue. There could be more vehicles during the day. This concerns having them parked overnight. So Martha, that might address some of what you were thinking about also. Okay, are there any other questions or anything the applicant wants to add at this point? No?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and no other members of the public. I think we addressed that. Is that right? I don't see or hear anything. Okay, so we'll close public session then and begin deliberations. Okay, does anybody have any thoughts? I mean,
well, I think I made myself pretty clear that I think with the clarifications that we've discussed and the applicant has agreed to, that it's a fairly harmless request, and it won't encumber the property with no restrictions that would make it turn out to be a mistake in hindsight.
Yeah, it does seem to be quite limited, especially with the weight restriction, limited really to the size of a pickup truck. And it's just one additional vehicle. And I do think I saw other home businesses, maybe even a landscaping business in the area that had several vehicles. Of course, again, it's during the day, but I don't think having a home occupation and having commercial vehicles like this is out of character for the neighborhood. And it is well buffered, and it is very limited what they're asking for at this point.
I had no problems with the application. Do we want to talk about if there's going to be conditions, what they would be and how they would be phrased?
Well, we talked about potentially three restrictions with the last ones entered. One would be that it would be no larger than a Class 2 vehicle. The second condition is that the applicant would give up his right to have signage for the business. And the third would be that no commercial vehicles would be parked overnight in the panhandle.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I don't feel it's necessary for him to give up his right to signage, but maybe others don't agree.
Yeah,
I find that a little restrictive, really, to give up the right to have signage. You know, it's an occupation, and even if there doesn't seem to be a need or a desire at this point, it is something that the business is entitled to, and I'm careful about giving it up.
Well, I would jump up and down and say madly in support, but he's allowed to have a sign no bigger than 2 foot by 2 foot. He's hardly giving very much up. And in fact, the sign on the side of the truck is bigger than the sign that he's allowed to have.
Yeah, I concur. I don't feel strongly the need to waive the right to the sign. He has a right to it, and as Rick mentions, it's pretty limited. I also don't feel strongly that there's a need to have the restriction in the panhandle, in part because I didn't realize at first that this request was so limited in terms of the vehicle size. I think there are just physical and geographic restrictions back there anyway. And it just seems a low risk. And my fear is we have struggled so much with trying to figure out the area that I just think it's sort of rife with potential confusion. And I don't know that it's particularly necessary given that he's limited to a Class 2 vehicle.
Well, I voted to approve the request for 4, so I can't very well argue with that. So then what we are is we're back to the sole limitation being a Class 2 vehicle, and the application makes clear that that's the what he's asked for. So I guess from that, basically all we'd have to do is approve the application as submitted. Or do we want to make it harder than that?
I think it would be a good idea to go through the criteria if we could, briefly.
I think you're absolutely right, because there's a neighbor who's not happy with the whole discussion, and we need to cover the full reach of the requirements rather than just give a quickie answer. So I'd be happy to do that.
Sure.
So the variance not contrary to the public interest. Well, what we pretty well discussed here, that the public's probably not even going to be aware that anything's happened unless they've attended these meetings. You can't, from a practical standpoint, you can't tell the difference. And it's pretty clear to me that the intent of the guidance in the zoning ordinance is to limit the number of monster vehicles that might be parked on the property. Item 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. It's actually the same answer as to 1. 3, the substantial justice done. This family has been chasing a fairly small request at some time, just because the application doesn't fit nicely into our ordinance. and the purpose of the variance is to clear the way when you have that kind of conflict. And there's no chance that this approval will affect property values one way or the other for anybody. Literal enforcement will result in an unnecessary hardship, because if there's any hardship at all, is more than they should have to withstand, because there's no harm at all done to the neighborhood. And so, based on that, go ahead.
Proposed use is reasonable. Home occupation is allowed in the neighborhood, and given the location and the character of the neighborhood and all that it's a wooded area, there doesn't really seem to be a substantial relationship between enforcing the purposes of the ordinance and this particular property.
I think my guess is that if the complaining neighbor understood the nature of the request, they wouldn't mind agreeing to it. They don't understand that it doesn't have anything to do with his ability to have whatever vehicle he wants during the daytime, and that the restriction is only on overnight parking, and the request at this point is for one light vehicle.
Yeah, I have a question about that. I don't see any. I wasn't at the previous meeting where this was a bigger ask, and it was not approved. I don't see anything from any neighbor, and I don't believe that person has attended this meeting. Am I correct?
I can't remember if the neighbor spoke or not, but there's been no secret about who was it that was opposed to the request, and a number of the neighbors have spoken in favor.
Okay.
She did speak, and she didn't like the commercial influence and the noise. Right. And, in a residential district, that's reasonable concerns. But I think this request addresses all of that and is quite reasonable. So,
yeah. Well, having an additional vehicle overnight doesn't really add to noise and traffic. The issue is having it parked on the property overnight. And also at this point now, we're talking about one pickup truck. So that should mitigate.
Right, which is already there.
Right.
It's just would now have lettering on it to meet the requirements for a business vehicle.
Right.
Now, Laura, I told you earlier, I actually do have the agenda this time.
Congratulations.
Would you like to make a motion? Well, first, does anyone have anything else to add?
Rick, if you're going to make the motion, I do think it's worth including the language, because it's not in the agenda, it is in the application, but including the language limiting this to a Class 2 vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. So I move to accept the application of William and Maria Curtis for a variance in Article 6.10, home occupancy, Section 6.1, 6.10.2, evidence of use, to permit one additional commercial vehicle limited in size to Class 2 to be parked overnight on the property located at 99 Beach Hill Road.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, vote? It has to be by roll call.
You have to call out, I think.
Yes, I'm getting there. And you're not voting. Laura?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Esther?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so the motion passes and the application is approved as submitted.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
You don't have to leave. You don't have to leave.
Good night.
Okay, good night. So we'll move on to... Okay, so the only remaining matter for us is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Okay.
So I've got a couple of simple-minded things. Right at the top, and I guess it'd be 14. Just as tonight, it's not obvious that Doug and Barbara are here or they aren't here. And
that's true.
So I don't want to
hurt be removed. It should say not present or just be removed because they were not here because of the circumstances of the last meeting.
Okay, and I'm leaping fast here.
Okay.
I want to congratulate the author. Made me sound much more intelligent than I actually am.
She's gifted, isn't she?
So I go all the way over to line 233, and the sentence starts on 232, and it says they would not be able to produce more than 2,000 barrels annually. No alcohol would be consumed at the word barn other than the beer that was brewed there. And I think, particularly in what's said further on in the document, that they actually don't sell any other alcohol, that instead of consumed, it ought to read sold. But I don't know if that's consistent with what was said at the time or not, but there's no question that the issue of alcohol being served outside the premises other than the beer. What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, the word barn is actually separate from the word barn brewery.
Yeah.
Is what this, so perhaps it should read, and I don't know whether the word consumed was used. The idea, I think the intent, what the applicant was saying was that the word barn brewery is not selling anything other than the beer that they make there. So at least it should say at the word barn brewery, right?
Yeah, that's right. What didn't make sense to me is if they bought a glass of beer, did they have to drink it before they walked out the door? Or could they, can they walk upstairs? I mean, they're serving wine upstairs. Can they carry their beer upstairs? I don't know, but.
I don't remember I remember thinking about that when I was reading the application, but I don't remember whether we discussed that. I think I don't recall.
I think they were clear that any beer sold in the Nano Brewery had to be consumed inside that space.
Okay, so then just adding the brewery to the word barn, as you'd suggested, should solve that problem. I'd be happy.
You might want to, add the word brewery.
Well,
that's right.
I would add the word brewery. I mean, whether we say consumed or sold.
No, don't say sold, because they didn't say that. Consumed is good.
Okay. So I would add brewery because I that was my understanding of what they were saying. The only thing that they're that I thought it was being sold, but yeah, the only thing that's being consumed there is at the brewery is the beer that they're brewing. So they were saying they're not a full bar or restaurant.
Right.
So if we add the word brewery after word barn in line 233.
Correct.
Okay.
So then I zip right along to Mr. Pinnell on line 359. So I have two things. Obviously,
So that was Mr. Merrill on line 359.
Merrill? Is that
it should be Mr. Merrill. Yeah. So Mr. Pinnell in line 359 should be changed to Mr. Merrill.
So the question I have is, I thought that the vote was actually 4-1 and not 3-2.
No, it was 3-2. Chris voted nay, which made it a 3-2 vote. It was a motion to deny the application.
It was a double negative.
Yes.
Confusing.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I had a couple of things. In line 290, Mr. Theobald clarified that there was no selling of alcohol, but they could serve it for a donation. The applicant, Ben Anderson, also said that. So I think it should say Mr. Theobald and Mr. Anderson, just for accuracy, because it's his application and he verified that they weren't selling alcohol. They were.
Good addition.
Okay. All right. So in line 290, Mr. Theobald and Mr. Anderson clarified there was no selling of alcohol. I actually had a few things up at the top, line 255. They will likely not have any events for the next 6 months. Is that what they said? 6 months?
Yeah.
They did? Okay.
I think they think they're shut down by the virus.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Because it's going to get warm during that time, and I know they had events outside, but okay, well, that's what they said.
Also, it was a month ago. So it's only 5 months.
Right, that's right. Okay. And in lines 257 to 258, did they say that it would help to financially support the word barn? Because I know that was not, I know that wasn't a reason, that wasn't included in the application, and it wasn't included in any of the, they didn't rely on that or bring that up in discussing how they met the criteria. And I don't recall them saying that, but if they did, then they did.
Well, the person who did this didn't read the application. So where would the words have come from?
So it must have. Okay. All right. So leave that as it is then. Those things stay. The only other thing I thought we needed clarification on was that there was a question of, there were letters that were submitted by email. And there is a notation in lines 226 to 227. In brackets, Ms. Petito said they were not in the packet. And it was clarified that they were submitted by email.
Right.
So I thought we should indicate somehow that the letters, they were not in the packet, period. The letters were submitted by email. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, so after the word packet, period, the letters were submitted by email. In line 227. Okay, that's all I have. Does anybody have anything else?
Yes, on line 364, we have another Mr. Pennell. And
okay.
I didn't know you'd gotten married, Martha.
Well, strange. I might have. Who knows? The question was whether I was there on the for the 20th, and I was there. So I think you just strike the words and Mr. Pennell out. I think Laura, you would.
I what?
I can't hear her.
Just line 364.
364.
We're talking about the minutes of the 20th of October, and I was there.
Okay.
I don't think you were, but I can't swear to it. But Mr.
October? I think you're right. I wasn't there.
So it should read Ms. Davies did not vote as she was not present on October 20th.
That's the way I feel it should read.
Okay.
I think it may well be the same mistake that was corrected on 359. The Chris was the person they were trying to write there and not.
Was Chris not present on October 20th?
I think that's correct, that he was not.
I'm not so sure on that.
What was the subject of the October 20th meeting? Does anyone recall? Was that the IOCA?
Yeah.
No, there was the house on Washington Street was one.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Oh, and he wasn't there.
At the carport.
Yeah, I have to go get my minutes.
Yeah, and that was the carport, right?
Yeah.
That was the carport.
That's as I said.
Yes, Rick, why do we doubt you?
I know. Amazing.
Okay, so it should say, line 364 should say Ms. Davies and Mr. Merrill.
Correct.
Did not vote as they were not there.
Very good.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Kevin, how long has your wife been with the meeting with?
Not my wife.
That's not your wife.
I'm very young. I'm only 8.
Oh.
Why?
I don't see how I could have made that mistake. Well, your mother must be really beautiful. You know that?
Somebody had to get the genes.
Yeah.
Wasn't me.
Okay. Do we have a motion on these minutes?
I move to accept the minutes.
As amended?
As amended. Thank you.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Well, no. Roll call. Anne?
Can I vote on this?
Oh, were you at that meeting?
I was not, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, then I can vote. I
Wasn't either.
Okay. What was that? I couldn't hear you.
I'll vote aye.
Okay. Martha?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Okay, and Kevin, you were not there, right? Okay, and I vote aye, so motion passes, minutes are accepted as amended. Okay? I don't think we have any other business, except for us to say happy holidays to each other.
That's true. Happy holidays all.
We'll see you all in the new year.
We better all be here.
Yeah. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second?
I'll second. Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Anne?
You can't leave, Ann, until you say aye.
Okay. Martha?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Rick?
I'm going to say aye this time.
Okay. Laura?
Aye. And thank you for not being contrary, Rick.
Esther?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, you too.